On today's Join Us in France, an episode with Elyse on Figeac in the department of the Lot in the southwest of France. This is Join Us in France, episode 143. Bonjour, I'm Annie, and today I bring you an episode with my friend Elyse on the lovely small city of Figeac in the southwest of France, aka Occitanie, or Occitania in English. The shout out today goes out to Rebecca Briggs, who pledged to support the show on Patreon this week. Thank you so much, Rebecca, and all the other listeners who support the show on Patreon. You are really making a huge difference, and I hope you know how much I appreciate your continued support. To support the show on Patreon, go to patreon.com/join us. Patreon is Patreon, and Join Us is without any spaces or anything. And thank you very much. Thank you also for your one-time donation, Dennis Henke and Amber Gillis. Ooh, I hope I'm saying those names right. Amber says, merci beaucoup for all your wonderful French content. Since I found your podcast 2 weeks ago, I've been listening every day to get myself excited for my first trip to Paris this summer. Well, I'm glad that we're getting you psyched for your trip. That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Dennis and Amber, for using the Tip Your Guide button on the joinusinfrance.com website. If you like this episode, you should also check out episode 46 about Sarlat, also in the southwest, and episode 62 about Cahors, and episode 88 about Cordes-sur-Ciel. These are all 3 places that you might consider visiting since they're not that far away. For show notes on this episode, go to joinusinfrance.com/143, the number 143. Elyse and I are going to lead a week-long tour in Paris between May 14th and May 21st, 2017. If you love France, culture, great food, and a lovely glass of wine now and then, and want to travel with us, look at addictedtofrance.com. We are delighted to have seen the response to this tour and look forward to meeting you in Paris. We are also very, very close to adding a tour in the southwest. It's going to come very, very soon. I think probably between this episode and the next. I was hoping it'd be done by now, but we have to cross all our T's and dot all our I's before we announce dates and make sure that we have all our ducks in a row. So we have a little bit more due diligence to do before we announce, but it's going to be soon. Now, for the new iTunes review this week, thank you for your review, Alain Laverdière from Canada. Alain says, he gives us 5 stars, and he says, has become a favorite podcast, wonderful company on the hour and quarter stroll from work to home. Great for prepping for your French holiday, and great for feeling like you're on holiday. And it's signed Alain Laverdière from Calgary, Canada. I love your name, Alain. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but I can say that name without having to think. And you can't tell me, oh, that's wrong. You're supposed to say Laverdière. I don't know how you say it. Alain, how do you say Alain in English? It's not Alain, is it? Maybe it is. I don't know. It's Alain in French. Lovely name. Alain Laverdière. All right. Thank you very much. And now on with the show with Elyse on Figeac. This is Join Us in France, episode 143. Hello, I'm Annie.
And I'm Elyse.
And Join Us in France is a show about all things French. How you doing, Elyse?
Oh, I'm doing okay.
Excellent.
We're having this little cold spell here, but I'm kind of enjoying it, actually.
No, it's been cold. Ooh.
It's been cold. It's cold. Toulouse is never really that cold. Look, you just asked me if my coat was new, and it's not.
That's right.
It's just been hanging in the closet for about 5 years because it's never gotten cold enough to wear it. But it has. I've been wearing it all week.
Yes. We've had freezing temperatures at night, and we're not used to that, I have this puppy, guide dog puppy, who likes to jump in the ditches.
There aren't any ditches.
Well, the ditch is full of water, but it's frozen. And so he jumps in, and he's like, boom.
What just happened?
It's kind of funny. Anyway, all right. Today we are going to talk about Figeac.
Figeac.
Lovely place in the Southwest. We love our Southwest.
Yes, we do love our Southwest.
Indulge us.
Yes.
Today's not Paris.
Today's not Paris.
Nope.
And it's actually a lovely. Ooh, I got very high up there. And, a small town that's really a little bit off the beaten track, out of the way, but is filled with wonderful things to see. And it's a wonderful surprise. Figeac is spelled, by the way, Figeac. And it's typical of a lot of the names of places in the Southwest that end with that AC, which actually is supposed to be something that goes back to when the Franks showed up in this area. That was an ending of names and words that somehow has to do with them.
Okay.
So we can hope that maybe that's what it is there. It's a town. I guess we can call it a town because I would not really be able to call it a city, and it's not a village. It's got a population of 10,000.
So yeah,
and it's with its surrounding area comes up to about 16,000.
There's some major industries there.
There's some major industries, yeah. It's on the river called the Cele River, which is Cele accent aigu, which is a tributary of the Lot River.
Oh, okay.
And it's in the department of the Lot, which we both love.
Mm-hmm.
I particularly absolutely adore. But it's a little bit out of the way because to get there, if you come from Toulouse, it's still a good 2.5 hour drive almost because there's no major highway that goes directly there.
Yeah, it's a little bit surprising. When you look at it on the map, you're like, oh, I'll be there in an hour and a half. And no.
No, but that's because you have to take some of these nice, lovely little windy country roads.
Yeah.
Maybe you could get there in 2 hours. I think the word is that there's this big section of highway that is going to open up, but it's kind of northeast of Toulouse. It's at the western edge of what is called the Massif Central, which is really the central mountainous area of France, and particularly in the southwest. And it's kind of nestled in this little bit of a valley, but along the river. And strangely enough, one of the reasons it's famous, and we're going to be talking about that, is because of this wonderful person named Champollion, who was born there. And it has a museum dedicated to him and to his work. But I was doing some research because I really didn't know very much about the ancient past of it. And it turns out that it was actually on the Roman route. Everything goes back to the Romans. I mean, I don't know what. There's nothing that didn't happen before the Romans, and nothing that happened different than afterwards. It's like they were there, and that's all there is to it. But anyway, I guess what the Romans were always good at was finding the path of least resistance to travel from one place to another, and obviously, logically, you follow the river valleys. Right. So it's the Cele River is a river that runs east-west with lots of meanders. That's one of the reasons why it takes so long to get there, because it's really beautiful. The area around there is absolutely gorgeous. But anyway, it apparently was founded by them, and then it really came into its own, if we can call it that, starting in the 8th century. When a monastery was created there by a man, and I have to tell you this because I love these names. In French, his name was Pépin le Bref.
Yes.
And Pépin le Bref was actually Charlemagne's daddy.
Yes.
And Le Bref means the bref can be translated into English as brief, but I went online to check it again, and of course they say that the story is that he was called that because he was so short.
Yeah, it means back then it was short.
Poor guy, Charlemagne was not short.
It's okay. It's all right.
It was okay.
It's fine.
He was cool. He was
cool. So long as you're feet touch the ground.
As long as your feet touch the ground.
Yeah.
So Pepin the Bref actually founded this monastery, and leave it to them, the Vikings, those good old crazy, uncombed haired, bearded people from the north, they raided they raided Paris. They went up the Seine River. They raided everywhere. I mean, anywhere you could get to by boat, they went. They came down the Garonne. They came actually as far as Toulouse. All of this in the late 700s, and they actually went up the Selle. You have to see what this river looks like on a map to imagine that they had the patience to do this, just to raid this monastery because they had heard that it had treasures. And of course, that's what the Vikings did. They went places, took the booty, and then left. But they destroyed everything along the way. They were good for construction workers because they created a lot of work afterwards. So they had to rebuild.
Awful.
They had to rebuild, and they built the new monastery, and they built very big stone walls around it. And then they the king put this on the map by making it a pilgrimage stop on the road to Compostelle. And actually, you can go from there to Rocamadour, which we've talked about.
Yeah.
And so it became very wealthy. And there were lots of, interestingly enough, it's also an area, because of the running water, there were a lot of tradespeople. There was work in leather. Way back when, work in metal, work in leather were very important as a way of making a city or a town wealthy. And so Figeac really became very, very prosperous. And it stayed prosperous.
Not the case today, no.
Not the case today.
Today it's aerospace industry.
Now, today it's high-tech, right?
It's a lot of companies that are they're subcontractors of Airbus. So
right.
They produce airplane parts.
Right.
Lots of engineering jobs,
Yeah.
lots of manufacturing jobs.
But Figeac is interesting also. All of this stuff was really fun to read about because I didn't know about it. I know about it as of today. It was a Protestant stronghold during the War of Religions. And very interestingly, there are certain pockets, for people who don't know the story, it's a whole very, very fascinating, complicated story, but the southwest of France was really a major area where Protestantism did develop. And so there were towns that became either all Protestant or they were Catholic and pushed the Protestants out. And Figeac actually became a Protestant stronghold and stayed that way for over 60 years.
Yeah, the lot had a lot of that.
Had a lot of that. And what happened was that Louis XIII, who's actually a king that has a lot to do with a lot of the stories we've told, he was responsible for really defeating the Protestant armies, and he tore down the walls of Figeac. So starting in the early 1600s, there were no more walls around it.
Right, it's not a walled city today.
It's not a walled city.
No.
But this one I love a lot. I didn't know, and it really warms my heart, I guess, because as an American, I find all of this stuff kind of moving. The town of Figeac, the entire town, received a medal of bravery in 1948 for the resistance movement that it created during World War II, because it's kind of centered in a region where there's a lot of countryside around it.
Yeah.
So a lot of people who fled the cities to join the resistance against the occupation by the Germans lived in the forests, and the entire population of Figeac helped the resistance. So I don't know if there's another city that received that kind of a medal for the entire basic population.
That's
kind
interesting
of neat,
to research. I'll have to look into that.
That's kind of cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
And as you just mentioned, it is now a town that actually is growing in population because of aeronautic industry. It has a lot of subcontractors, and it also has, get a load of this, the smallest university in France. It's a wee place,
and they train
people in mechanical engineering and aviation. And that's because there are factories there that create propellers. And so there's a lot of IT there, and a lot of
Figeac.
Yeah.
Is the name of the company that does propellers, among other things. And then you have Figeac Aero, which is another major... Right. Yeah.
So I didn't know that. So, of course, it's very kind of cute, but So it is indeed, it's actually affiliated with the university in Toulouse. So I don't know, Annie, I don't know if you know whether it's a 2, 3, or 4 year university there, but then apparently if you want to continue, you come back to Toulouse, from the studies there.
I've never looked at the university. I know a lot of people who work in Figeac who are engineers for aeronautics, but most of them have not been trained in Figeac.
No, that they've gone there to work.
Yeah, they go there to work.
Right.
It draws a lot of people for work because those are well-paying jobs. I mean, they're not like super top-of-the-line jobs, but they're well-paying jobs for what used to be essentially a rural town. And they were able to, attract... I think it started with Figeac Aero. Long time ago. The founder is still alive.
Oh, yeah?
But getting on in years. Ratier Figeac is a part of a huge conglomerate of aeronautics companies. I can't remember. I haven't looked at it for a long time. But yeah, it's a major... besides Toulouse, which has even more of that stuff...
Right.
Figeac is the second, and it's for people who want to work in aeronautics, but they don't want to live in a big city. It's
great.
It's really good.
Yeah. Well, and of course, yes. It's also, interestingly enough, and that's one of the things about it. It's very prosperous. It wasn't for a long time. Obviously, in the 1700s, 1800s, it was really backwater, really away from everything until the railroad came in and all that. Now... as you say, it's a wonderful little place for people who don't want to live in a big city, but want to be in a place that, number one, is beautiful.
Yes.
And has a lot of things. It has some lovely little restaurants, but one of the things that makes it famous is there are two things, really, aside from the fact that it's got a lot of economic activity, is that it has one of the largest restored city centers of medieval and Renaissance homes that are absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Really, like drop dead gorgeous. And I've seen lots of villages, and it is absolutely amazing. Yeah. They're just beautiful. And it's got a couple of really great bookstores and some nice restaurants and a few little
now,
places.
The restaurants,
it's really cool.
I have to say the restaurants are very, very typically French.
Yes.
So that means that they don't serve all day. No. So you would have to plan your meals, eat between 12 and 2. Well, 1:30 is best if you get there by 1:30. And then from 7:30, 9:30 at night. Because they probably have sandwich places that are open.
No, they have a couple of brasserie cafes.
Okay, they have a couple of those.
Yeah, because when we went for a weekend... And we went to a really nice place I guess it was the Saturday night. But the other day, we just went to one of these, nice cafe brasserie type places where you can get an omelet, salad, whatever, hamburger during the day. But it's gorgeous. And what was fun was that, number one, they had a couple of the most incredible bookstores. And they have books both in French and in English. It had a lot of art, which of course, gets me going. They had a couple of upholstery places, designers who do furniture. It was really the kind of place where it was filled with surprises. You could walk around some of the little streets in the city center and discover things. And I thought, wow, this is really rich. It's rich in that kind of thing. And of course, the reason why all of this exists is partly because of the industry and partly because of our dear Jean-François Champollion.
Yes.
Okay.
Clever man.
Clever man. So what is that? What are we talking about? Well, in Figeac right now is a museum. A museum that was actually created in the 1880s, believe it or not, but which has been remodeled in the last 20 years.
Oh, and not even that. Less than that. It's been like maybe 10?
Well, they finished it in 2007.
Okay, there you go.
They finished it in 2007.
Because I remember we drove to Figeac to see the museum.
Yeah, and it was closed.
Because we didn't know it was under renovation. And then we went back to see the museum, and it was beautiful. We just thought it was gorgeous.
I guess I was there 4 years ago. So that would have been after the renovation.
Well, my husband's a linguist by training, and if you're interested in linguistics,
right,
you want to go there. I mean, it's just really fun.
I don't know if you know this, but the official name now for the museum is the Museum of world writing. That's the official name.
Yeah, because it has a big display of different writing systems.
Right. It's a museum about the history of alphabets, of writing systems. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's not a big museum. It is fabulous. It is absolutely fabulous. And the reason why it is there is because of this man who was born in Figeac, Jean-François Champollion. And Jean-François Champollion is the man who translated the Rosetta Stone. Now, what does that mean? Well, first of all, you and I were just talking about this. So you have to know what the Rosetta Stone was. The Rosetta Stone is actually a stele, which means it's an upright piece of stone. You saw it. I didn't. So I don't know how tall it is.
It's pretty big. Oh, I might
about
say
a meter and a half.
Yeah, I don't want to. It's been years since I've seen it, but it's pretty big. It's about my height, a little more maybe.
Okay, yeah.
It's
right. And the Rosetta Stone which is actually. And has been since it was brought back to Europe, is not in France, but in the British Museum in London.
Yeah.
Because it was taken from Napoleon by the British troops when the English and the French were fighting in Egypt at the very beginning of the 19th century.
Right.
But really, the importance of the Rosetta Stone is that it's a huge document. In ancient Egypt, they carved things into stone. I mean, our expression, it's not carved into stone.
2,000 years old?
Actually, yes. It's from about 200 BC. So that makes it to a little over 2,000 years old.
Yeah.
But you know what it is? You know what it is? I get a kick out of telling people this every time, It's a document that describes tax payment.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, you thought it was romantic? No way. It's not a love letter to the queen of Egypt. No. But really, the reason why this document became an obsession for a whole bunch of people, and then, of course, became the life's work of this man, Champollion, is because on this stone are written the same text in 3 different alphabets, not just 3 different languages, but 3 different alphabets.
Right.
And so on the very, very top, you have ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, which I think everybody has seen, at least in a book, which are basically pictoforms of some kind of writing. In the middle is a form of writing which is called demotics, which is really a simplified version of hieroglyphics, which eventually was discovered to be an alphabet, but is still based on the hieroglyphics. And on the bottom is the same exact text in ancient classical Greek.
Mm-hmm. And that was the clincher.
Yeah. And so what happened was that there were several people, I didn't know this, but apparently there was a kind of intellectual contest among linguists that were both French and German among French, German, and English linguists to see who would be the first person to be able to decipher Egyptian hieroglyphs based on working backwards from the ancient Greek,
Because once they realized that it was the same text, repeated 3 times, obviously that's the key,
But they didn't know it first.
That's right. They didn't have like a FAQ.
No, they didn't have. And it's really amazing because until I really paid attention to this, I really have always heard about this for a long, long time. But, in my mind, it was like, oh, yeah, he took a look at this stone and blah, blah, blah. Well, no, actually.
No. He had been studying languages
This was
years.
his life's work.
Yeah.
This was his life's work.
He studied all sorts of languages because he wanted to understand
languages in
general.
Yeah.
How do they work? That's
right.
I mean, he's the linguist par excellence.
Par excellence.
Yeah.
So how's this for some info about him? At the age of 5, okay, he was born in Figeac. He had an older brother who was fairly intellectual and well educated, who moved because he got a job as a preceptor, which is basically like a private teacher. To Grenoble.
Yep.
And he took his little brother, Jean-François, with him. And there he started studying with a couple of people, one who was an abbé in a monastery, another, I don't know. They were all intellectuals. But at the age of 5, he started learning ancient Greek, Latin, and Hebrew.
Wow.
Okay? At the age of 8, he already knew how to read in all 3 of these languages.
Wow.
How's that for precocious?
Well, probably not every word, probably not everything, but he knew enough to have a good head start.
Well, apparently it was recognized very quickly that he was totally brilliant in languages. He apparently was absolutely nul, as we would say in French, in math. Couldn't even put numbers together, but he was a little genius when it came to linguistics and languages. Yeah. So he started being given these honors and being given all kinds of tutors, because that's what they did at that time.
Yeah.
And at the age of 14, was admitted to the Imperial High School, which had been founded by Napoleon, because Napoleon, through various people, had heard of him. And because Champollion had already announced at the age of 14 that he was going to start deciphering the Egyptian hieroglyphs, because he was already studying Coptic.
That was his goal, yeah.
And he was studying Aramaic, which are languages that are somewhere between ancient Egyptian and Hebrew and God knows what. And they all have different alphabets.
If you're a linguist, forgive our ignorance.
And he knew Arabic.
If my husband was here, he'd be pulling his hair out.
Yes, well, but it's quite impressive.
Yeah, it's amazing.
He could read and write in ancient Greek, in ancient Hebrew, in Arabic, in Coptic, in Syriac, in Aramaic.
Yeah.
And he took on, he heard of the Rosetta Stone. Now, what I find amazing is that at the age of 18, he was made a full professor of linguistics at the school in Grenoble at the age of 18.
Well, that makes sense to me. He already knew more than the other professors.
He'd never laid eyes on the Rosetta Stone except in illustrated reproductions.
Right, reproductions, yes.
And in fact, in the long and the short of it, he did his first analysis at the age of 18. He wanted to be the first person to correctly translate it. At the age of 19, he corrected the prior translations that were done by older linguists who had already been working on it all their lives. And what happened was that it was in 1815 that he actually got a chance to do the work on the hieroglyphics. But because of getting mixed up, it's unlike imagining someone like this to do it, but he got mixed up in political stuff. And because of that, he got sent home to Figeac for a couple of years because he was on the wrong side of whatever was going on politically.
Yeah.
And so he spent a couple of years back in Figeac, and since he basically had nothing much to do in Figeac except do this translation, he spent all the time working on it. And by the time he was reinstated, they created a chair of modern Egyptology just for him in Paris.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And in 1826, he became the first head of the first major section of Egyptology in the world. And he was responsible for almost all the major acquisitions that exist in the Louvre today that come from ancient Egypt. But it wasn't until, and this makes me a little sad, it wasn't until 1828 that he finally got to go to Egypt.
To see it, yeah.
To see everything that he had dreamed about, the pyramids and everything else.
You know, back then there was a lot of interest in Egypt.
Yeah.
There were, all over the world, you know. I lived in Utah for a long time, so I know about the history of Joseph Smith, who was, he was crazy about Egypt.
Oh, really?
He was really interested in Egypt. Lots and lots of people were, at the time, both in America and in France. Napoleon was nuts about Egypt.
He was nuts about Egypt.
You know, mostly taking their stuff.
Well, he also, but he was also because it was a crucial territory in terms of the Ottoman Empire.
Yes,
at the same
yes.
time. Yeah.
So there was just a lot of interest in discovering Egypt, and obviously it's like so cool and so different from anything we have in Europe.
Right.
or in America. I mean, back then, I think Americans back then were more interested in Egypt than they were in Native Americans.
Probably.
Which is kind of strange because they were right there.
Well, but I think it's also, maybe that's a little different. I'm not sure, but in the last periods, the dynasties that ruled Egypt were Greek. They were the Ptolemies. And so I think that Europeans, and therefore us largely, we consider ourselves and somehow descendants of the peoples that were eventually the Romans, the Greeks, and eventually we go all the way back to Egypt. Look at Moses. I mean, Egypt is really important even in the Bible.
Yeah.
It's really you're right, though. It's a place that fascinated even more than it fascinates today.
Yeah.
And everybody wanted to go there. Artists went there to paint.
Yeah.
Archaeology developed at that time, and they were going there trying to guess the age of things. And then, of course, it was
and being blown away every time.
And being blown away. In fact, that Champollion is the man responsible for the obelisk that is at the Place de la Concorde. He was responsible for the acquisition of it. They bought it. It dates back 3,300 years. And it was brought to Paris in 1826.
And Champollion is buried.
And he is buried in Père Lachaise.
Père Lachaise.
Yes.
And his gravestone is an obelisk.
And unfortunately for him, this is why I find it so sad. So here's the man who was a total genius when it came to linguistics. And when he was able to finally decipher the Rosetta Stone, he was able to literally translate ancient Greek, ancient Egypt hieroglyphics and demotics. And so he opened the way for all future studies of ancient Egypt.
Because once you have an alphabet.
He died at the age of 41.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
Yeah, he went to Egypt in 1828 and stayed there until 1830. So he was 38, and he came back in the beginning of 1830. They think that he caught some bug. He had tuberculosis, apparently, but they think he caught some kind of really nasty thing when he was in Egypt, because the following year, even though he was the most prestigious scholar of Egypt, and he was the man in the Louvre and head of all Egyptian antiquities, he actually died very quickly at the age of 41.
Wow. That's sad.
Yeah.
Yay for modern medicine, because stuff like that usually, it can happen, but it usually doesn't happen. You don't die of tuberculosis or whatever.
Right. So it's kind of a shame, because he obviously would have done an enormous amount of work, even more than he already did.
Yeah.
So as you say, he is buried in Père Lachaise. Yeah. And because Figeac is his hometown, even during his lifetime, they made the home where he was born, his family home, they made it a small museum in his honor. And in the end of the 19th century, they turned it into the Champollion Museum. And then they turned it into a museum of language. And then, of course, it was remodernized and made into this really fabulous museum now.
Yeah, it's a really nice, well-done museum. The display, honestly, in the Southwest, we have a lot of older museums that are really hokey, in my opinion. But that one is not. That one is very well done, very well thought out. Even if you only spend maybe 2 hours in there at the most, there's really not that. It's not that big. If you stopped at everything and read every display, you could spend longer, I suppose. Yeah. But really, in an hour, for most people, will be enough. But it is not one you will forget. It's a good museum.
Yeah, I would. We spent well over 2 hours there, because first of all, you have really, if you go through everything, really, it's fascinating to see the history of all the different writing systems in the world. Mm-hmm. It's very well documented. Yeah. There's audio stuff to listen to. Yeah. And then they have temporary exhibits. And
visually, it's stunning.
Absolutely stunning. It's this Renaissance building that was simply made into inside. Everything's high tech with beautiful glass windows. And in the courtyard, there is a reproduction of the Rosetta Stone set in the ground that was done by a very famous conceptual artist named Joseph Kossuth, which is very interesting, because he's an artist still alive whose work is all about writing and language. And so I didn't know that he was the one that had been commissioned to do this. And it's basically a reproduction that you can kind of walk across. It's kind of cool. You walk across it in this courtyard. But it's a fabulous little museum.
Yeah.
And there's a very nice little bookstore where you have little books, even children's books that have to do with writing and writing systems and alphabets. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and the museum attracts a lot of school children, obviously, because writing, and some of them are very young. So if you go on a school day, expect that there will be a group of two of French kids there, but they are usually very well behaved. I mean, I've never been in a museum where the school groups were out of control.
No, they do very well with that here in France.
They do very well. So, but fabulous place.
It's a fabulous place.
The outside, when we went twice recently. Well, recently in the last few years anyway. And the one time it was soggy and wet and miserable.
It's in a valley.
It's not as fun, but
in the wintertime.
in the wintertime it's not as fun. But what is? I mean, most places it's better if it happen to be there on a sunny day. I don't think that helps most places.
There's a very nice. It is a much better place to visit. Quite honestly, spring, summer, and fall. There's a really lovely outdoor market. It's in an area that's famous. In terms of foodstuffs, you have walnuts and foie gras and a bunch of things that are really famous that are produced in the area.
There's probably local wines too.
This probably is a local wine.
I haven't looked at it.
I don't know. There's got to be.
Yeah.
But it's really it's a great find, Figeac. It's really one of those little off the beaten track places that is fabulous. I was reading yesterday, it said that they have between 50 and 60,000 visitors to the museum every year. So that's not bad for a teeny little museum in a tiny little town.
Yeah, that's right. No, it's a good place. And hopefully when we do tours in the Southwest, I hope we can include Figeac or maybe recommend that people go before or after our tour. And if you want to see more about that, go to addictedtofrance.com. Addicted. I'm addicted.
She is addicted. She's addicted. Okay, you have to say something to me in ancient Greek or in some other...
Oh.
She can't.
No, I
she
can't.
I'm good Demotics, no, huh?
I'm good with French and English.
You're good with French and English.
A little bit of Italian.
Yeah.
A little bit of Catalan. A little bit of Spanish. But very minimal.
No.
Egyptian, I'm sorry.
No, I guess not. I guess we can't talk in Egyptian hieroglyph medallions. It doesn't work somehow,
But there's probably audio stuff at the museum there.
I'm sure there is.
Says stuff.
Well, I guess that's one of the big mysteries of linguistics in terms of studying what we strangely called dead languages, which is that nobody really knows how they sounded and whether they had inflections and stuff like that.
We don't know.
But I think they do. They really do. You know?
And this is a great reminder of how little we really know.
Yeah.
Because this is only the early 1800s. It's not that long ago.
That's right.
And we had no clue about...
For thousands of years.
About things that had happened,
Well, I mean, it's kind of connected to this, but it's fascinating to know that archaeology just really didn't begin until after Napoleon as a serious study. And for a very long time, up through into the beginning of the 19th century, many, many people refused to believe that things were as old as they really are. There was this idea that nothing could be that old. In fact, one of the things that I was reading when it was about Champollion was that when he did an analysis of some of the writing and they decided that certain things were from approximately 2,500 or 3,000 BC, which means they were 5,000 years old.
Yes.
There were very important religious people connected to the Catholic Church who said that was not possible.
Right.
Because the world had been created on such and such a day.
Yes.
Therefore, it was not possible. So by doing the research on Egyptology, they really opened up science. They were really rocking the boat.
Yeah.
And they really opened up science to the whole idea of the past.
Yeah.
Much more than it had been before. So it's that's why it's so neat.
One of the hardest things to change is people's opinions.
Well,
people think they know a lot and really they don't. Like I think I know a lot, probably, but I know I don't.
Right.
I just remind myself occasionally that, you don't know that much, It's good to discover it. Well, which is good because it means you can go visit places like that and learn a little bit about writing systems.
And writing systems.
That you would probably never think about otherwise. So that's one of the fun things about travel is,
Absolutely.
Go discover something, even if you never become an expert, because let's face it, to be like Champollion, you'd have to spend decades.
Yeah, you have to start at the age of 5.
Yeah.
I don't think
Too late for me.
It's too late for us, really.
But it doesn't matter. We can still go and enjoy the lovely small city, I guess, or big town of Figeac.
Figeac.
Lovely, lovely place. Thank you very much, Elyse.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Before I let you go, I have an important announcement to make, something that just barely happened. I'll soon be adding a new segment to the show, and it's going to be a book group segment. During this book group segment, we'll read and discuss. During the segment, we'll have to read on our own time. We'll discuss books that have to do with France, French culture, French lifestyle, travel to France, French food, French wine, etc. Anything that has to do with France is going to be fair game. The listeners who enjoy the show also love to read books about France, and some have asked me to start a book group on Goodreads. For those of you who don't know, Goodreads is a wonderful website where you can discuss books that you have enjoyed. And they also have a section that's more like a forum section where you can discuss books that specialize in a specific topic. So, and I wish I could remember who asked me who launched this whole thing, who asked me to do this. I have a terrible memory when it comes to names, and I tried the search function in Facebook, and it's seriously bad. It's as bad as my memory is what it is. I got to teach you this great French expression now. J'ai une mémoire de poisson rouge. Let me say that again. J'ai une mémoire de poisson rouge. Which means I have the memory of a goldfish. And yes, that's about me when it comes to names. I do apologize, whoever asked me to do this. I thank you, but I don't remember your name. So this Goodreads group is created, and I will share the link so that you can join this group on the various Facebook pages. I'll put a link in today's show notes, so that's on joinusinfrance.com/143. If you can manage to read your show notes on your phone, and I say manage because some applications make it difficult, and they're all a little bit different, so I can't just tell you how to do it. For most applications, you have to tap on the logo, and then but not all of them. Anyway, so the link will be there also. I'll give you the link as many times as I can so that anybody who wants to join can do it. Once you join the group, you'll be able to add books to the bookshelf. So these are books that you've read, that you've enjoyed, that have to do with France, obviously. And we'll discuss them with all the group members. And I really look forward to learning some of the books that you have enjoyed about France. But I have to admit, I also have another motive for starting this group. As you can imagine, authors are always interested in getting free publicity, so I often get requests from authors or their agents. And these requests for authors to appear on the show, well, I never know what to do with these requests. I have done that once and wasn't super happy with the results, so I don't really want the show to get salesy, and I think if the author is on for an hour, obviously, there's nothing they can do to avoid getting salesy. It's just, obviously, they've put in all this time to write this book, they want to sell it. So my temptation is to just say no. But at the same time, some of these authors probably wrote books that you would enjoy. So, it's hard for me to just say no. So I've decided to kind of remove the authors from the free advertising temptation a little bit by doing it this way. I will invite them to join the Join Us in France book group on Goodreads, add their book to the bookshelf, and put a description, participate as much as they want on Goodreads, and we'll take it from there. Authors always offered to give me free copies of their book, and I've taken a free copy twice in total. I've turned away most of them because it just makes me feel icky. Why should I get a free copy of this book? Especially if I'm not going to give them advertising, and I don't really want to give them advertising. That's not the point of the show. So I will, instead of me getting a free copy, I will ask for 4 copies total. 1 for me and 3 for other members of the group. And I will choose who gets the free copy. Probably it'll be based on whoever participates in the conversations about that book. And once we've all read the book all the way through, we'll get on Skype and we'll record our thoughts to share on this special book group segment of the show. If somehow we never manage to read the book, it probably means that it wasn't a very good book, and then we'll just drop it. I will also probably talk to the author if we've decided that the book is good and that we want to talk about it. But in that short interview with the author, I'll just ask to talk about why they wrote the book and what their connection to France is. And I won't let them get salesy, I hope. Okay, so please join the Join Us in France book group on Goodreads, and let's start talking about books that we love that are to do, that have to do with France. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening to the show. To find out about tours offered by Elyse and I, visit addictedtofrance.com. Please subscribe to the Join Us in France email list. It only goes out about once a month, but it is where you'll find out about our most recent episodes, and you'll also be the first to hear about promos we are running on the tours and anything else new we're cooking up. I invite you to look up the Join Us in France closed group on Facebook, a great place for folks who know a ton about France, exchange tips with those who are just starting to look into visiting France. À bientôt!